What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Haas Talks. We are at Bob's Turn 5. It's the Haas Talks studio here at Port City Raceway. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks to all of our great sponsors, Performance Electronics, TelStart Technologies, Forge Performance, Velox Racing, DragonFly Aviation, Team Green Creations, and we welcome in Hitch this week. Guys, I've got a great show for us. This week is the 10th annual Donnie Crawford Memorial, and I figured, you know what? Each year, the past couple of years, I've tried to get somebody from the foundation on to kind of talk about it. We've had Morgan McCollum. We've had Jake Rosario. This year, a very, very special guest. I'm so excited for this episode. Donnie Crawford is going to be on the show right after this on Haas Talks.
Performance Electronics, custom electronic solutions. From design to manufacturing, let us put your ideas in motion and become your company's full-service electronics manufacturing experts. Performance Electronics.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. As I promised you, man, this feels so great. This feels so good. Donnie Crawford sitting in the studio with me today. Donnie, thanks for finally saying yes.
Oh, yes, no problem.
Man, I am just so glad to have you on the show. You know, this week being the 10th annual Donnie Crawford Memorial, it's a big week for the family, for the foundation, for the legacy, and I figured what better way to kind of kick things off and get people in the know than to have one of the pieces to the legacy come in and kind of chat with me. How did it get all started for you? I mean, you raced back in the day, right? So being born into racing, kind of, right?
Yes, I was pretty much born into racing. I've been to racetrack for all my life, and you know, my family, my sisters, everybody, we all grew up racing. So
Right.
I've been around racing my whole life.
So your dad, Ray Crawford, went up against, I mean, it was back in the day of the Emmett Hans and everything else racing at the Tulsa Speedway. Tell me what it was like being a kid, growing up, going to the races at the Tulsa Speedway. Because for a lot of people that watch this show, I mean, they know micro racing, they know some sprint cars, but a lot of them may not know about like just the legacy and the heritage of racing and how big it was and how popular it was in Tulsa back in the day.
Yeah, it was. It was very popular, and it was back in the day, there was a huge rivalry between Dad and Emmett Hahn, and they were both great racers. And you know, they filled the stands at the Tulsa Speedway. They had great races, and the fans were. There probably wasn't as much to do, but there were a lot of people went to the races back in the day.
A lot of people went to the races. But it was like a camaraderie, and it was almost like the rivalry kind of helped the racing. You know, there's people that would boo Emmett Hahn, and there's people that would boo Ray Crawford. But after the years kind of went through, they become buddies, and you know they rekindled, and they're buddies at the shootout and whatever it may be. Just kind of talk about being a kid and seeing people boo your dad. What was that like? Did your dad have to explain to you, hey, not everybody likes us, but everybody watches us?
Well, you know, I think that was one of Emmett's saying is, you know, it was something similar to what you said, and it really didn't bother me because I knew the people that booed him really didn't know him because Dad was one of the best people anybody would ever meet, as was Emmett.
Yeah.
And, you know, little do people know that they were probably good friends back then, too, so.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So back behind the curtains, they were actually buddies and chit-chatting and cutting it up. Did you ever go to the pizza place? Wasn't that the big deal? Everybody goes for a slice of pizza or something like that after the races?
Yeah, I spent my days at Shotgun Sam's, and I think we went to Ken's Pizza in the later years, but mostly when I was a kid, it was Shotgun Sam's across from the racetrack, and a lot of racers went there, and there was a lot of good camaraderie there, so it was pretty cool.
That's excellent. That's the stories that I like to hear is, you know, the camaraderie within the racing community, and I mean, it still happens today. When was it that you, wanted to try racing? Because you gave it a shot for a while, right? Did some racing?
Yes, I did. We built me a micro first, probably when I was close to 16. Back in that day, we didn't have really junior classes, so most people that started racing were, 16, 17, 18 years old or older even. Even when I started, went from micros to bigger cars, I think I was 20, which was very young for that time back then. Most people didn't start when they were, maybe in their late teen years. And then, honestly, when I started and had some early success, a lot of the younger kids started coming out that were younger than I was. So it kind of started a trend when Hillenberg's put me in a car, and Dad and Harold Hillenberg were best friends, and me and Andy were best friends, and it's just part of something that was going to happen. We just didn't know when.
So you built a micro back in what time frame was this? What year, ish?
I'm going to say it was probably about 76, probably 77, 78. The Walkers from Oklahoma City, which is some of the sprint car manufacturers that built one of Dad's early cars, they came in and built a kind of a one-off micro with a Koenig motor in it that we could never really get to run quite right. So my success in micro was not very good, but we had a lot of fun, and there's a lot of neat stuff looking back on it that we learned. So it was pretty cool.
Did you race? So Rujo was in 74-ish in that time frame. It was back in the NMMA days. Where all did you race your micro at?
Just mostly here. We raced Port City. We may went to a couple out-of-town races, but basically, as far as my career, we pretty much stayed home at Bartlesville. Bartlesville had a pretty cool track, and we went there a few times. But there was Bartlesville had a beautiful track, and we had a neat place here. When Andy started racing micros, we started traveling a little bit more, and I started running big cars, and he was running micros, and then shortly after that, he started running big cars also.
So how many years did you run micros before you got into a big car?
Probably 3 or 4.
3 or 4 years, and then you hop in a big car. Were they Champ cars then?
They were. They were 312-inch motor Champ cars, 100-inch wheelbase. In the first couple of years, actually the first 4 years I raced, that's pretty much what they were. They did go to 360 fuel-injected motors, but they were pretty much a Champ car is what they were, and it was pretty cool because it's different than a sprint car. They drive different, and it's a different feel. So it's pretty cool though.
So you've been around it a long time. Things have kind of changed from Champ car to sprint car to every different super modifieds to everything. Everybody kind of gets them all mangled and mixed up. But you didn't start until you were your late 1920s?
Yeah, I was probably, I'm going to guess I was probably 20 years old when I started. I started in 82, and I was born in 62, so I was 20.
So if that would have happened today, you would have been too old.
Yes,
You're too old. You done missed the boat, buddy. Sorry, man.
I missed the boat. I already did. I missed the boat.
So whenever you look back on that and you think about it now today, the way things are, do you feel like parents may be putting a little bit of stress on starting the kids too early sometimes? Do you feel like maybe we need to let them be kids a little bit longer, or do you think that starting them at an early age is the way to go?
Well, there's probably not a better place for these little kids to be running around than at the racetrack, in my opinion. I'm not saying that they have to race or they don't have to race, but as long as they have some place where they want to be, and instead of out kicking rocks down the street, I think it's a great deal. Sometimes we as parents sometimes probably expect a little bit more out of our kids than we should, but that's okay. It makes them better.
So whenever you make the change from the micro to a big car, what's going through your mind? I mean, you're 20 years old, working on a race car, hanging out around race cars, and now you're getting to do something you watched your dad do. What was that transition like? Was it a big jump as far as horsepower and the way the car handled or was it something that you were just still new at, so you really didn't have any muscle memory built up about how to drive a race car?
No, I think it kind of came pretty naturally because I stepped into a great team that was already established. My expectations were really, nobody expected much out of me, so there was no pressure on me. It's like Ryan Timms and some of the kids that have moved up recently this year from the micros. Them kids go right at it, and it's they don't miss a beat.
They don't. They just start picking them off left and right. It's really at ease for them. I mean, they just. Mm-hmm. And if you watch the way they work, you're like, man, you just won an A feature. You won like 10 grand. He's like, yeah, that's cool. Gets on the little pit bike and rips off.
Right.
Would rather be doing that. How long was it that you raced the super modifieds and stuff and the race cars until you were, I don't want to call it retired, or until you were done racing?
I pretty much raced every year, probably until I think 2000, and that's the year Andy quit, and the year we decided, the tall speedway was having a little bit of difficulties. It wasn't going great out there, and it was a good time for us to quit. And I was pretty young when I quit. I'm not sure I was ready to, but I was ready to. So, I mean, at that point, Donnie was racing, and I so I didn't miss a beat. I started helping him and had a lot of fun doing that. That's a whole different challenge, being on the wrenching end of it instead of the driving end, but it's just as fulfilling as the driving end.
Now, whenever you were a driver, I know I keep on going back and forth. You just keep on bringing up great points.
Yeah.
Before you were a driver, did you ever work on Dad's car? How many late nights were in the shop with Dad getting Dad's car ready?
Well, we had a lot of late nights, but my role in the situation was probably a kid role. It was they had Robin Morton and Billy Cowett, and them guys were great with the car, and they wanted to do it all themselves, and they did it all themselves. That's what they wanted to do, and that's what therefore they'd work 3 or 4 nights a week on the race car, and I would do whatever they wanted me to do, and it all worked out good because, there's a lot of pride in both ends of that deal.
Right. So was your time spent like coloring the tires, coloring the labels on the tires, and the cleaning the panels and stuff?
Probably not quite to that extent, but yeah, I did get to sweep the shop a lot and take the trash out and make sure everybody
you were lucky enough to do that.
I was very lucky. Make sure everybody had cold pop, so it was pretty good.
Cold pops.
Yep.
Everybody had to have a cold pop, man. So once you, what were some of the the major wins and stuff for you? You did some pretty big stuff in your career. I mean, you won some races, right?
Oh, I did win some races. I never won an outlaw race. Them guys were was always a tick better than I was. We just never committed to doing anything bigger than what we did. And what happens is you hold yourself back in order to get better. You have to commit. And we just, as a family guy and a racing dad and a racing son, my commitment was I was happy with what I was doing.
Right.
Yeah. Centrally
located. I mean, you bring up a good thing there. Family. The Crawford name as a family is something that it's magical to me and to a lot of people outside looking in. The last name Crawford carries so much more than just racing. The family values that you guys have is pretty outstanding. You have a nice lady that you actually said yes to you whenever you got married, Jody. Mm-hmm. How long have you and Jody been married, first of all, and how long did you guys date before you finally got her to say yes?
Right. It took a while for her to say yes because she knew I was a racer. But I think we dated 3 years. So I think we met in I'm going to say we met in about 1980, 81 or something like that, and we got married in 84. So we've been married around 37 years maybe.
Man,
like
so let's flash back to 1980, 81, whenever you meet Jody. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the first time you met her? Was it at a racetrack or?
Yes, it was at a racetrack. I was running micros at the time at Muskogee, to be honest with you, and it was kind of a little bit of a blind date, and we kind of hit it off, and we had mutual friends. The first time I actually met her was at the Tulsa Speedway she had went to the races with my aunt to watch my dad race before I even raced big cars. So the next from that point on, we pretty much maybe without maybe a week or two through our whole life, we've managed to totally be committed to each other from that point on, from the point we met, And
that's just amazing to me that you guys it's one of those success stories, You don't see it coming. A lot of the best ones are that somebody set us up on a blind date.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those. I had like I said, she came to the races with my aunt and one of her best friends, Jamie Stroud, and they were racers, and it's just kind of, and we're all still friends to this day, and all the people there's a lot of people that used to go to the racetrack with us then that are still buddies of both of ours. So it's racing community is pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Absolutely, without a doubt. Hey, this has been segment number 1 with Donnie Crawford. You'll catch more right after this. Race fans, we are back with Donnie Crawford. Donnie, you talked about the racing community and just how cool it is being around it your entire life, kind of like myself. I mean, I grew up in Oklahoma City around that racing community. Just the bond that racers have with each other, regardless of if we are butting heads on the racetrack, push come to shove, we're going to help that guy out if he really needs it. It's something pretty spectacular. Whenever Donnie Ray was born, did you know that he was going to be a race car driver? Was it a deal where you're like, I had a boy, I'm going to have me a race car driver?
No, it really wasn't that way at all. You might think so, and back on it, I would think so too. But it just kind of happened, and really, until he wanted to do it, I had no. I really didn't ever force it. But what happened was, when he was about 8 years old, our Harold Hillenberg, Andy's dad, went down, and he came rolling in with a brand new 60 Kawasaki dirt bike. And I got on it and rode it, and that thing was so fast, it scared me to death. So I thought he'd be better off with the roll cage. And so that was kind of the turning table for us, thinking that he might be going to be a race car driver instead of something else.
Right. Did Donnie start off in junior sprints, or was it directly straight into restrictors? Like, where did he start out in the rankings?
Back in the day, they had 250s, and me and Pete Frazier were friends, and Pete owns Factor One. Pete wanted to build him a car. Me and Pete spent some late nights up there designing probably one of the first cars that the Factor One ever built in I would say maybe a junior sprint, it would have been called. Anyway, we put a Honda Ninja 250 in it, and that was kind of the class. And you could run that's right when they were going from a 2-stroke to a 4-stroke 250. And he probably didn't have the fastest car out there, but it was all he needed for the first year or two he drove. And my buddy Stewie kind of came out here one night when I was in Oklahoma City racing, and Don Ray won his first race with that car.
Really? With Stewie?
Yep.
Oh, Stu. Was it something that, like, he seemed kind of natural at, or was it something where it took a lot of coaching and a lot of work was it from Dad, or was it from, like, people like Stewie and other folks like Pete that would be, hey, check this out and do this, or did he listen to Dad a lot?
Well, he did, and I coached him a lot. I'm not sure how much good it did him, but I think it's like one night the light came on, and when that happens, something comes within you. And I've seen the same thing happen to several little the boys around here, and all of a sudden they weren't very good last week, and now the next 6 weeks they're driving great lines and doing all the right things and not doing anything silly, and that kind of comes within. But I think coaching does help. Me and Leon was coaching Brady at the time, and I was coaching Don Ray, and we had these other days out there, and we were having a blast. But these kids weren't that good until all of a sudden their light came on, and then I remember Brady one night. He came. It was a play day, and he got out of his car, and Leon was waiting there to ask him a couple of questions, and Leon got out of the car and pulled a yo-yo out of his pocket and started throwing that yo-yo and walking away. So he didn't care about racing; he was just there to play.
Yeah.
But that all changed, and when you decide you want to win, then you start thinking a little more serious about it, even if you're 12, 13 years old.
From the start, even in junior sprints and everything else, were you one of the dads that was like, hey, you need to be in the shop with me, you need to be learning this stuff? Or was it something that you kind of let, you and Pete wanted to figure it out, and once you figured it out, then you'd let him tinker? Or was it something where you're like, you got to be in the shop with me?
No, he had to do certain things, and he had to, really more than anything, he had to have good grades. And he had to be a good kid. And beyond that, I did expect for him to kind of help me wash the car. Me and Papa fought a little bit about it, because Papa would do all the things that he was supposed to do just so I wouldn't get on to him. So that was a kind of a hard time in our life, but it was all well worth it. It was pretty cool.
Papa would always cover for him.
He'd cover for him. And I remember one time Don Ray's grades got down a little bit, and Aaron Lemons had put on one of the first indoors we had at the pavilion, I believe. And so I drove Don Ray's car. He said, well, you can't drive it. And he said, I'm already entered. And I said, well, we have the same name, so it looks like I'm going to drive it. And Papa was mad at me all weekend. Of course, he got over it, and Donnie Ray had better grades from the rest of his life. So, so it did work.
Yeah. There's one of those plans where, hey, we're going to execute this deal.
That's right, and it worked.
How long did he drive junior sprints before he moved up the ranks?
He probably drove
a couple years.
Yeah, he probably drove a couple of years, and then we got to running restrictors at that point. We ran I believe we ran a year or two with restrictors. And then when he went to A class and we were running Port City one night, we had 2 cars and we were running 2 nights a week, and that's kind of what got him over the hill and to a better path of winning and and being tough to beat, and he physically was getting stronger, and things came together, for him all at the right time.
He did a lot of great things. Was he considered like a wing guy or a non-wing guy? Like, what was his preference? Or did he just want to be in a race car?
I think he just wanted to be in a race car. I considered him a wing guy because I've always been a little apprehensive of non-wing cars because they're more dangerous. But in micros, I think the worst he probably ever got hurt was in a non-wing micro at Cowtown, and he got
that place is
thumped.
fast.
Yes, he got thumped pretty good there, but really he didn't care. He just wanted to race, and he wanted to win, and he wanted to drive hard, and he was physical, and he was a lot of things a lot of the good guys are.
Donnie, growing up, he also didn't he run for Eric Fenton?
He ran for Eric Fenton a little bit.
Didn't he work there too?
He
right?
Worked there for a little bit at Eric's place. Eric and Tim were good friends of ours. They had, like a lot of other people, they helped pave Don Ray's career.
Yeah, it was a lot of things like, these days, this day and age, you have to have a lot of financial backing to move on to the bigger teams and the bigger names. It seems like just Donnie and his attitude from the family and the morals that you guys raised him right, there was something there that you guys helped along the way, put him in the path of a lot of right people, and a lot of people helped him along the way. The Fentons being some of those, the Eubanks. He ran for the Eubanks quite a bit, didn't he, back in the sprint cars and stuff like that?
Yes, there's several people, including Mike and Megan, that were like I said, they were great people in Don Ray's career and his path, and and Don Ray, like I said, he most of his he gave most of the credit to God. He was a great Christian kid. He was he was just a good friend for a lot of people. But there's a lot of people that on his path to racing or whatever he was going to do that were positive inspirations,
right.
Like Megan and Mike. They were inspirations in more than one way, just like the Fentons and like a lot of other people in his life. They're inspirations on and off the track.
Right. And that's the thing that I feel the Donnie Ray Crawford Legacy Foundation carries on. And it invalues and it instills in people that, hey, it's not just about racing.
Right.
Because of what the foundation does for younger kids wanting to go to college that may not be able to afford books or may not be able to afford that extra class that's going to put them over the top to help them to graduate a little bit sooner or whatever it may be. The foundation does a lot. I know you're kind of a lot of the muscles behind it. You help them set up and you help them tear down, and you get a lot of say-so in some things, I'm sure. But there's a lot of people behind the scenes that make it happen.
Well, there is a lot of people in there, and people come and go, and we appreciate all of them because without everybody's help, we couldn't help people.
Right.
And that's all we're doing is helping young people. It's like Don Ray. He even him, he knew he needed a career, even though he loved to race and may have made something of it, may not have. But he also knew he better get a career going, and that's what he was on his way to doing, and that's why we have a passion for doing what we do.
Right. Just to carry that on is simply amazing. Now you're a grandpa, and that's been something. Being able to watch you and Jody around the boys is something that's pretty amazing. Just the light in your eyes and the twinkle watching the boys. You're out here now with your son-in-law Jake. Every weekend you guys are watching the track and watching your times and figuring things out. And not every night's a great night. Just like last weekend, A-class. Boy, it was terrible.
It was rough.
Absolutely terrible. It wasn't what Jake usually looks like. But you know what? You guys had a lot of people back there helping you, and a lot of people were hands-on, and you guys didn't quit. And then you come back and you win the non-wing feature. Something pretty spectacular. What's that been like for you to kind of continue on and not only just coaching and mentoring, being a family member, but just being a part of, somebody else's career and helping them, with their hobby, with their passion. It's not a thing that's going to set them over the top and buy them a mansion on the hill, but, it pays some of the bills.
Well, it's like Jake. Jake's a wonderful, I couldn't ask for a better son-in-law than Jake. And Jody would say the same thing. There's no doubt. And I'm sure Jake's dad would be to be here helping him every week,
Right.
just like I am. But fortunately, I'm the one that gets to help him. That's just like I would love to be racing with Donnie Ray, but you know what, Jake's since I can't, I love what I'm doing.
Right.
So, but like Jake, we it took us a year or two to kind of get to jiving, and I'm not afraid to tell him what I think, and you know what, he's not afraid to tell me what he thinks, and
right.
so. The thing about it is I know that I've raced my whole life, and I know that I don't know everything. I know that I've got ideas sometimes that don't work, and I mess his car up sometimes, and he don't get mad at me, and I don't get mad when he does something silly either. So, but we created it's a really nice camaraderie between us and our families and everybody, and we are competitive. We might not be the best ones out here all the time, but we're really close because there's a lot of good guys out here. Port City's just like it was 20 years ago. If you come to Port City and win, it wasn't given to you.
Right.
You earned it.
Right. The boys. Do you see 5 years down the road a junior sprint rolling out of a trailer with Baby Ray behind the wheel?
I'm afraid I probably do. I'm sure I do probably.
Yeah.
I think and it really is up to him. It's up to Jake and Chassis, of course, and they know I'll be here if they do it. There's nothing better than grandchildren.
I'm just going to say this, that if he doesn't want to race, but he wants to announce, I've got a microphone with his name on it.
Well, it would probably be better than having one with my name on it. But, yes, he's probably going to be able to talk a little bit better than I do.
As far as the foundation goes and in the race that we have every year, do you see it ever slowing down? I mean, I feel like it gains momentum every year.
It does gain momentum, and it's because it's really not anything that we're doing. It's just because people are helping. It's and people are involved, and people see the good coming out of it, which is inspirational. So
yeah.
So I see it. I mean, it's still a lot of work, and I can't speak for Jody because she puts a lot into it.
She does a lot.
She does a lot, and she does things that absolutely I couldn't do, but she does. She marches through it like a trooper.
If there is any piece of advice that you could give to an up-and-coming driver, a parent that is trying to coach their kid along the way, what kind of advice would you be willing to just throw out there to anyone, any age? It doesn't matter. You've got to have some kind of advice.
Well, the one thing that I think of when you say that is something I would tell most people that are starting to race, and I think there's about 80% of the races are won on about 20% of the track, and so you have to run the right lines. And if you don't run the right lines, you're probably not going to win until you run the right lines.
So running the right lines is where it's at.
You got to run the right lines, and it starts at the little kid deal. If them little kids don't arc the track like they need to and lose their momentum, it's easy to see from the stands. It's not so easy to see from their point of view.
Right. And you're an open book, right? You welcome people coming up and getting some information as long as they don't want to know stagger and what bars you run.
No, I wouldn't be afraid to tell them anything.
Oh, guys, Donnie, thank you so much for taking time to chit chat with me.
Thank you so much.
I think it's been good for me because I feel like I know you even better. But folks, check out the Donnie Ray Crawford Legacy Foundation. They do great things from not only scholarships, but they help in driver aid and so many different things. If you want to donate, they're always accepting donations. They're always doing something from fishing tournaments to cornhole tournaments to races and so much more in between. Check them out on Facebook. Check them out online, the Donnie Ray Crawford Legacy Foundation. And thanks for watching Haas Talks.
Talks about the top of his head.